Hey everyone, my name is Christian, and I'm here to talk to you about the very hot topic of software supply chain attacks and how transitive dependencies greatly introduce this risk in the modern software development pipeline. The recent wave of NPM supply chain attacks has highlighted a very hard truth about modern software development. Organizations rarely run only the code they choose to install. Instead, applications rely on a deep and rapidly changing dependency tree where a single direct dependency can introduce hundreds, sometimes thousands of transitive packages. This complexity creates an expanding and often invisible attack surface that threat actors increasingly exploit through techniques such as malicious package updates, dependency confusion, and maintainer compromise. In this session, we'll examine how these attacks actually propagate through the NPM ecosystem and why transitive dependencies make detection and response particularly challenging for platform and security teams nowadays. We'll demystify how dependency resolution works, explore real world attack patterns, and explain why traditional perimeter and repository level controls are no longer sufficient on their own. You will gain a practical understanding of where risk truly enters the software supply chain and how teams can introduce smarter controls, visibility, and policy enforcement without disrupting developer workflows. Let's get into it. So I'd like to kind of show you what this looks like. And when I say this, I mean the transitive dependency graph. This is an actual NPM dependency network that we're looking at right now. And you can see how convoluted it is and how complicated all the interdependencies are between these binaries, between these public packages. This, I think, illustrates really well why this is such a challenge and has been a challenge for quite some time. And it will only increase with the rise of AI, agents, creating new code, publishing to open source repositories, right? Leveraging new technology, right? New packages. This will continue to expand, and this problem will not go away. Every time you pull in a package, you're inheriting its entire foundation of dependencies, and with it, every risk and vulnerability. This is why this problem scales as your organization scales. As you grow and add more projects, your teams grow. We have more code. Your agents are creating more code, which means your reliance on this complex interconnected ecosystem grows exponentially, and your attack surface expands as well with it. So again, hopefully that illustrates it well. I have another kind of visual here that I think kind of, again, zooms in maybe on a particular package. And we can actually get into transitive dependencies for those that may not be aware. Your transitive dependencies are libraries or packages that your project indirectly relies on through its direct dependency. So in this example, I have Express version 5.1.0. You can see its transitive dependency graph here, and one of those is debug. It's highlighted in orange there. And debug was, I believe that version was a malicious version that had been pushed during one of the NPM supply chain attacks in the past year. It just goes to show if you've ran, your pipeline or your developer ran NPM install on Express version 5.1.0, you would be basically pulling in that malware indirectly. So it just, again, kind of highlights the risk and, again, why this is such an issue, right? Attackers know this. That's why they continue to, to attack NPM registries like that, PyPy as well. We've seen some attacks, but these dependency trees can quickly become complex, and most enterprise projects will have hundreds to even thousands of transitive dependencies. So again, hopefully this illustrates the issue that we're seeing. And what we can do is we can actually dive into why, okay? Why do transitive dependencies introduce this risk, okay? So we've defined a direct dependency, right? Those are the dependencies within your package.json in the case of NPM. The dependencies that your project relies on directly, okay? Now, those direct dependencies have transitives, and those transitives have their transitives, okay? So let's kind of get into why, again, this introduces risk, okay? Most people think that when you install a package, you're just pulling in that one library, but that's not really what's happening. In ecosystems like NPM, dependency resolution works as a cascade. Each package selects a specific version of its dependency, and that chosen version brings its own set of dependency rules, and that continues down the tree. So in reality, you're not installing a single package. You're installing a tree of decisions made by multiple maintainers. Now, here's where this becomes a supply chain concern. Because each level in the tree defines its dependencies independently, even a small change at the top, like allowing a version range instead of pinning an exact version, can silently result in a completely different downstream dependency tree being installed. That means new code can enter your environment without you changing a single line. And that code might be perfectly fine, or it might introduce a vulnerability, or in a worst case scenario, might be malicious. And in the latter case, it turned out to be true. So the key idea is this: trust is transitive, but control is not. You might trust a top level package like Express.js, but that package is trusting its dependencies and they're trusting others. Unless you take explicit steps, you don't control those downstream decisions. Version ranges make this even more dynamic. They give flexibility, but they also introduce uncertainty because the exact dependency tree can change over time. And from a security perspective, that's why practices like using log files, scanning dependencies, and reviewing indirect changes are so important. They're how you bring determinism and visibility back into that system. You're not just shipping your code, you're shipping your entire dependency graph. And that graph is your attack surface. So let's get into log files and dependency pinning. What are they? A log file is essentially freezing the entire dependency tree. Okay, so that's going to be your direct and your transitives at that point in time. So it allows for stability, right? And we're typically seeing that in production environments, maybe staging, to avoid the introduction of risk by introducing a new package version of a particular dependency. And again, if they are upgrading, it's a very slow, kind of thought out process. It's there's a process for updating a particular dependency version, right? In the case of a security update, right? One upgraded version in dependency could end up breaking their whole production application if there are conflicts in code. Right? In staging and development environments, teams might use dependency pinning. They may be less strict with lock files in favor of testing out security patches, or they might not even pin. It does help developers stay current with dependencies and address vulnerabilities quickly without strict controls of production. However, some organizations choose to maintain strict pinning and even non-production environments to mirror production closely and catch issues early. So there is a trade-off between control, pinning for consistency, and agility, flexibility for updates. There are tools in the industry to help with this, but I hope this illustrates kind of the different ways organizations can stay protected from dependency attacks, supply chain attacks. So let's get into NPM and why it is such a hot target for a lot of adversaries, a lot of hackers looking to cause damage. Okay, NPM is the world's largest upstream registry. Okay, more than 17 million developers worldwide rely on it, and in the case of NPM, it does kind of allow a lot of small granular packages. And when I say granular, there are literally packages that just do basic functions like checking if a number is even or padding a string, and basically creates a deep and complex dependency tree. Okay, a single project can have a dependency chain that is over 16 layers deep, right? And that's nothing, right? This vast interconnected network means that one compromised package, even a tiny one, can have an exponential and cascading impact across the entire ecosystem. So again, being that NPM is the largest, naturally attackers love to attack NPM and exploit it. A lot of maintainers are just individual developers or small teams doing this work for free, trying to make a contribution to the community, and it makes them a prime target, right? They do get phished just like anybody else. They can have their account compromised in NPM, and at that point, it is game over, essentially. They're literally handing their keys over to the attacker, where that attacker can take advantage during that time. and publish malicious package versions, right? Hoping that they can exploit a pipeline or a development environment, and really just kind of spraying and praying, right? Kind of going wide and hoping that they can penetrate a network, right? So let's get into Shai-Hulud. Okay, this was an attack that happened back in September 2025. The software development industry was hit pretty hard by this. I think it woke up a lot of people. And just to get into kind of what happened, you can see on the left-hand side, we have the maintainer, Josh Junin, maintainer of very, very popular packages such as Debug and Chalk, Color Convert, that are used in a lot of NPM projects. He was phished and his account was compromised. At that point, he was attacked, and the adversary kind of stuck to and alluded the worm to the Shai-Hulud worm in the movie Dune. And at that point, they pushed malicious updates that injected browser-based malware into the affected targets, designed to intercept crypto, Web3 transactions, rewrite payment destinations, and redirect funds to attacker-controlled crypto wallets. So it was kind of nasty. There were a lot of folks affected just due to the amount of downloads of these packages collectively was in the millions, right? So just think about that. Think about that attack surface. With this attack, it woke up the industry and kind of introduced what some of the trends we're seeing now with cooldown policies and dependent bot cooldown policies and tools at the artifact management level. Again, just to kind of control new versions entering our build environments. So getting into the mechanics, if you're interested, of how this happened and how this attack propagated. So again, it would inject itself in the browser. It was known as a crypto clipper, a malware that is a browser-based interceptor, hijacks both network traffic and application APIs. And again, would watch for sensitive data, would watch for folks trying to send crypto. The reality is that these attackers only got away with about $50 worth of Ethereum. So it could have been a lot worse, but then again, it did wake up the industry. So to give you another example, we did have another attack that happened. Another dependency attack happened. Happened, I think, around the same time. So it was, again, another kind of, it was called the Singularity attack, another zero-day malware attack, but different than the previous NPM attack we covered. A little bit different. This malware was a worm and kind of spread itself automatically from one computer or system to another. Okay, so it would replicate on its own, which made it very hard to kind of pinpoint and destroy. And again, the scale of this attack was also pretty significant. This one would harvest secrets, exfiltrate data twice in different ways, propagate, self-propagate, and then essentially continue to amplify its damage. Okay, so again, these attackers are looking for cloud secrets, right? They're looking for build secrets. They're looking for anything they can do to penetrate the network, backdoor in, and start causing damage. Okay. The most recent attack was Axios, late March 2026. Attackers compromised Axios, so one of the more widely used JavaScript libraries in existence, with around 100 million NPM downloads a week. Think about that scale. They hijacked the maintainer account through a long-lived publish token, pushed malicious versions across major release branches within about 40 minutes. This attack injected a fake dependency called plain crypto.js, published to NPM just minutes later, with most projects silently pulling this in on their next install due to the version ranges that were specified. So again, the malware executed automatically on a post install hook. We know NPM really hasn't created much restrictions around post install hooks yet. So it was able to spread pretty rapidly, right? The remote access Trojan. So with those examples, what's the bigger picture, right? Supply chain attacks remain effective. There's a fundamental problem with tracking transitive dependencies and keeping inventory. And We have mechanisms in place to protect against them, but we still need to continue fighting against these supply chain attacks. Thank you.